Small mistakes can lead to big consequences, and a deep understanding of the key squares rule, which is the fundamental principle of an endgame, is crucial to success. By understanding which squares are most important, you will be able to outmaneuver your opponents and convert advantages into wins. In this video, we will explore how to apply this rule to win more games. I am Ishan and you are watching Ishriya's Hub. So, what is the definition of key squares? Key squares are those squares whose occupation by the king assures victory, regardless of whose turn it is to move. Let us look at some examples to identify the key squares. The first example is we see a pawn which is on the second rank. When there is a pawn on the second rank, there are three key squares. The square, two squares in front of the pawn, which is c4, and the squares to the left and right of the square, which is b4 and d4. And if the white king manages to arrive on one of the key squares, then white should be winning the game. Here the same rule applies to black if there's a black pawn placed on the 7th rank too. Now let us look at this example. Now there's a white pawn placed on the 3rd rank. When there is a white pawn placed on the 3rd rank, again there are three key squares. The square, two squares in front of the pawn, which is c5, and the squares to the left and right of the square, which is b5 and d5. If the white king manages to reach one of these key squares, then white should be easily winning the game. The same rule applies to black if there's a black pawn placed on the 6th rank too. In this example, there is a white pawn placed on the 4th rank. In this case, again there are three key squares. The square, two squares in front of the pawn, which is c6, and the squares to the left and right of that square, which is b6 and d6. If white king manages to gain control of that square, then white should be easily winning the game. Let's see how. White will play king d6, reaching one of the key squares. Now you can push the pawn on to c5. Now the king goes to c8. Now you can play king c6, taking opposition. The king goes that side, so you can go to the opposite direction. King b7. And then just simply push. Push, 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 and you win the game. Now let us look at this example. Now there is a white pawn placed on the 5th rank. If the pawn is on the 5th rank, there are six key squares. The square in front of the pawn, which is the c6 square, and the squares to the left and right, which is b6 and d6, as well as the squares, two squares in front of the pawn, which is c7, and the square that is left and right of the c7 square, which is b7 and d7. The same rule applies to black when there is a pawn on the 4th rank. Now let's see how to materialize the win. Here I'm going to play king b6. Now when the king goes to c8, now I'm going to play king c6, take opposition, and now when the king moves away, now I can go to either of these squares. So if the king goes to b8, then I'll go to d7. The king goes to d8, then I'll go to b7. Now as the king goes to d8, I'll go to b7, and then bam, bam, and bam, and we won the game. Now let us look at this example. There is a pawn, white pawn, placed on the 6th rank. If there's a white pawn placed on the 6th rank, then there are six key squares. The square in front of the pawn, which is c7, the square to the left and right, which is b7 and d7, as well as the square, two squares in front of the pawn, which is c8, and the square to the left and right of it, which is b8 and d8. The same rule applies to black if there's a black pawn placed on the 3rd rank too. The way you win this is actually to place d7. The king moves to d7. Now we go king b7 and then you queen and you win the game. Now let us look at this example. Now there's a white pawn placed on the 7th rank. When there's a white pawn placed on the 7th rank, the key squares or the squares on the 7th and 8th rank that touch the pawn square. So here the key squares are b7, d7, d8, c8 and b8. If the king manages to reach one of the key squares, then white should be easily winning the game. So how do you win this? Simply play king d7 and next move you will just simply queen and you win the game. I hope you understood the rule of key squares. If you have any doubts, feel free to comment down below. Identifying key squares is like having a superpower in chess. If you are able to identify key squares, then you have the key to success. I hope this video is informative. Don't forget to like, share, comment and subscribe to my channel as it makes me highly motivated to make more interesting videos. Your rating is valuable to us. See you in my next video very soon. Let's learn and grow together. Bye bye.